The comments of Mike Shields, I think, underline why after a lifetime as a Republican, after serving as a senior foreign policy advisor on 3 Republican campaigns, I am no longer a Republican because I am disgusted with the way the Republican Party is behaving. What we are seeing is that Donald Trump puts his own self-interest over the interest of the United States. You saw that just a few days ago in Hamburg, where he refused to press Vladimir Putin on his meddling in the U.S. election. In fact, he tried to explain and excuse it away, refusing to believe what the U.S. intelligence community has said, and he even cooked up this cockamamie scheme to engage in so-called cooperation with Russia on cyber issues, which is like the fox guarding the henhouse. And Republicans are not outraged about this. Instead, they're trying to make excuses for the White House. They're trying to make excuses for Donald Trump, even when we're seeing evidence of collusion come into clear view with this jaw-dropping meeting that Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, and Paul Manafort, the high command of the Trump campaign, they're meeting with a Russian lawyer closely connected to the Kremlin to get dirt on Hillary Clinton. And still, Republicans are making excuses for this. It's time to come clean. It's time to put the interests of the country over the interests of the Republican Party.
You want to respond to that, Mike?
Well, you just said evidence of collusion. There is no evidence of collusion. People have been looking at
Read
this
the
for
New York
months.
Times. Pick up the New York Times.
Hey, Max, I did read the New York Times. I read all 3 of the articles. There's actually 3 articles, which is where I got the other statement that I had was from one of the previous articles about this. I did read it, and there's no evidence. If there was evidence of collusion, then we would have a different story here. This would actually be something about a legal case. The person in question here,
there is something called an investigation.
Right, the person in question, and the person in question here said, I will go cooperate.
Bob Mueller was appointed about 2 months ago. The notion that this case should have been concluded by now is ridiculous.
But Max, the way that people like you operate, we shouldn't even have Bob Mueller the way that people like you reach conclusions, because you've already decided what was guilty and what was, yes. People
no, I'm reacting to the evidence, sir. I don't know what you're reacting to, except your bias in favor of Donald Trump. What I'm seeing is there's enough smoke in here to asphyxiate Washington.
Trump, so.
No, I was a lifelong Republican. I spent 30 years as a Republican, and I quit the Republican Party in disgust when Donald Trump got elected because I knew that Republicans would become morally complicit in the outrageous conduct of Donald Trump, and you're an example of that moral complicity right now.
Okay. Look, the fact of the matter is, Donald Trump Jr. said he would cooperate. He's going to go cooperate if he's asked to do that. I think
he's got to get his story straight first, though, because he keeps changing his story, right?
So you're just making my point, which is that you're so angry about this that you just want to indict everybody
you're
without
right.
actually going through an investigation.
I am angry when I see an American president.
That really hurts your credibility in this argument, Max. I'm sorry.
I think everybody should be angry when they see an American president, a Republican, who seems to be pursuing a Russia-first policy, who seems to be pursuing the interests of Vladimir Putin over the interests of NATO, the U.S., and our allies.
Was he pursuing that interest when he added Montenegro to NATO? Was he pursuing that interest when he reinforced Article 5, expressly the #1 thing that Vladimir Putin doesn't want to do? Was he helping the Russians out when we bombed Syria in direct controversy of what
I would refer you to his conduct in Europe just a couple of days ago when he refused
when he
to
gave
accept
a speech in Warsaw reaffirming Article 5.
One at a time, please.
Yes.
Go ahead.
If you read what he said in Warsaw, he said that Russia engaged in some destabilizing activities, which is a pretty nice way to refer to invading neighbors, meddling in our election, and committing war crimes. But when he actually met with Vladimir Putin for more than 2 hours, he came out of that and he basically seemed to accept Putin's ridiculous denials of meddling in the U.S. election. And right now, Donald Trump and the White House are trying to water down a strong sanctions bill that the Senate has passed against Russia. They are essentially protecting Russian interests. And you know what? Donald Trump shows a lot more interest in this imaginary, made-up, phony scandal, claiming there are millions of illegal votes cast for which there is not an iota of evidence. He's appointed a commission to look into that, but he has no interest in finding out anything about what Vladimir Putin actually did to subvert the American electoral process, which is a fact, which is the unanimous conclusion of the U.S. intelligence community.
Mark Preston, I need to get you in here because to Max's point where he talks about, he says Don Jr. needs to get his story straight. This is the third statement. You can put up the statement tonight, but there's a third statement from Donald Trump Jr. tonight. He's tweeted a number of times from his new lawyer where he basically says he did nothing wrong, that he didn't know what the meeting was about, he didn't know what it would turn out to be, didn't know if the information was reliable, and on and on and on. It does appear that there's a certain degree of denial and then all of a sudden the evidence, a reported evidence comes out from the New York Times and from other news sources, and then there's an admission, and then the story changes. It appears to be a pattern of sorts.
It certainly does. I mean, let me try to thread the needle between Max and Mike right there, because that was a fascinating discussion.
It's
because,
amazing.
and I do believe in, and maybe I'm wrong with this, that Max is probably still a Republican at heart, but is extremely frustrated by Donald Trump as the president and the leader of the Republican Party. So when you have two Republicans arguing over that, that in itself is fascinating. I do think we have to be judicious in how we use our words. Collusion, illegal, what have you, because we don't necessarily know. But on the other side of that coin is that the supporters of Donald Trump like to go out and obfuscate the facts. They like to try to confuse the issue. They'll talk about Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation, and that's fine. But we're not talking about Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation. We're talking about the leader of the free world. We're talking about the commander-in-chief. We're talking about the president, of the United States. To the point of changing stories, we've seen this. When you talk about a pattern, we saw Michael Flynn, the fired national security advisor, was not necessarily truthful in what his relations were or his discussions were with the Russian ambassador. We also saw that Jared Kushner had to change or at least amend his forms to get his top secret clearance. We also saw the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, during his confirmation hearing, not reveal that he himself had met with the Russian ambassador. Now, they all have answers or excuses for doing so, but you have to wonder when you see all this smoke, what I don't understand is why people get upset when we look for the fire.